Hello, and welcome to the 30th episode of Press A to Podcast, a podcast in which we talk about a video game of our choosing, and maybe someone else's choosing one day. We'll see. I'm your host, Taylor Severn, and I am not alone in this endeavor. I use plural when talking about this. And so we have my beautiful co-hosts, Brandon B-Dog. Your last name blanked on me.
That's okay.
You got it.
Yeah, B-Dog's good enough.
Yeah.
And because he's
B-Hawk.
Yeah, B-Hawk works too,
I'm
actually.
waiting for my nickname. It's going to be so good.
Scott Close Your Buck McPherson.
Hey.
And Jacob Puchik. I like Jacob Puchik.
I didn't even get like a shitty title like former host Jacob Huji. I got demoted, guys.
No, I had everything planned for one. I just blinked. I just couldn't do it at the moment we needed to. But this is the podcast.
I feel like... Sorry, Taylor.
What are you guys doing?
I feel like...
Fucking Jacob already
Making
taken
you
over.
The
Jesus
host
Christ.
was a great idea, except for one thing, and that you are breaking up real bad. But no, it's all right.
You're
Continue.
breaking up too.
Great. Alrighty. If anything, I know what to do. But yeah, continue. I'm sorry.
Are we good? Because you were breaking up with me.
We're breaking
Wait,
up?
you guys are breaking up?
Yeah, no, it was heartbreaking. And I think that's enough of how we're doing, because we should move on to our bigger topic, which is the Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, an N64 game released a long time ago when the N64 was an actual console.
It's still
It's
actually
not a console
An
anymore.
app?
I hate to break it to you.
Still a console.
I think it's just an app on my phone.
I don't know anymore, guys. The video game industry doesn't hold itself very well. Only the current things are actual things. Everything else never existed. And
Until
so
it's
we're here
remastered.
That's why they need to remaster it. They need to find
They
its
have to
soul
make it
made.
again. Yeah, I got you.
Where's my Donkey Kong 64 remaster?
Burning in Hell where it
So-
belongs.
What experiences do you guys have in Ocarina of Time? Any at all?
Well,
Played through it once.
Was that
Yeah,
recently? A long time ago?
It was definitely a long time ago.
Platform.
Oh, he's breaking up.
Yeah, we're losing Scott already. It's just like a regular show.
Yay! We're back to
Everyone's breaking
normal.
up.
Everyone, we're all
Change
breaking
it.
up with
And
each other.
computer frozen. Oh, he's back.
He looks displeased.
I can cover for him. I have had a lot of experience with Zelda. Just as a franchise, my first introduction to it was Ocarina of Time, but I've played the Game Boy games, Game Boy Advanced games, a DS game here and there. All the major installments I've played and beaten, except for Skyward Sword. I have
Which is
played
the
it,
best
but haven't beaten it. I don't know about that, but we'll get to it one day. So yeah, I'm very well versed in Zelda. It's one of my top gaming franchises. It left a huge
Yes, it
mark
should.
on my whole childhood. So yeah, definitely one of those big games for me.
Well, I wouldn't expect any less from you. What about you, Scott?
Am I not breaking
Scott,
up
you're
now?
part of the podcast.
Yeah,
You're back.
Am I
You're one of
talking
us.
fine?
I mean,
Am I good?
For now, so go.
All right.
okay, yeah,
Okay,
quickly
my-
get it out.
Okay. No, my experience with Ocarina of Time would be, I don't know, it all started about 5 years ago when Jacob lent me his cartridge. I probably played 2 chambers and then never touched it for 5 years. And then
Didn't give it
bought
back
a
though.
No, didn't give it back. Just kept it the whole time. Then I bought the 3DS cartridge and beat it in a week. It was fun, and now I'm playing through Master Quest, and it's also fun.
Nice.
And that's pretty much my experience in Zelda. I've played Spirit Tracks and the other DS one. I can't remember what it is, but that's pretty much it.
Phantom Hourglass.
Yeah.
That's it. There it is. That one was actually good.
Yeah. I am notorious for playing through Zelda and not beating it. There's quite a numerous Zeldas that I haven't beaten, but I have played. Ocarina of Time is not one of them. I have beaten Ocarina. Have I beaten Ocarina of Time? I want to say I've beaten Ocarina of Time.
I would definitely hope so.
I know. I have an N64. I played it on the N64, not when it came out, much later. And then when it came out on 3DS, I debated getting that or Star Fox, and I went with Star Fox. I regret getting Star Fox. But that's a whole nother bag of hammers right there. And I feel we can't have enough experience to talk about Ocarina of Time, guys.
Maybe.
So let us delve. Firstly, I want to frame our conversation by saying Ocarina of Time is a big deal. for Zelda guys, it's a big deal. It's shapes modern Zelda in like gameplay and narrative fashion, and it has become so iconic to the franchise itself that it shapes it in beautiful, mysterious ways.
Yeah, I feel like Zelda Ocarina of Time in particular, has had a huge impact not on just how the next Zeldas have unfolded, and just like its fingerprints are all over the place. It was the first one that moved to 3D. But Ocarina of Time has left a huge impact on the industry in general. There's so many games, big games, even nowadays, that are hugely influenced by it. You just have to look to games like Dark Souls. Dark Souls draws a lot of inspiration from Zelda. So, yeah, it is one of those big games, and for a reason, which we'll kind of explore.
In our last section, but the first section we have is a narrative section, and we're going to be talking about the story of...
I believe we have a sound bumper for it.
Stay a while and listen.
We did it! We did it, Reddit! Alrighty.
Okay, that was a bumper. It'd be good if I could hear it, because...
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
No, we can't hear it. But narrative. What did you guys think of the story of Ocarina of Time in and of itself?
I couldn't bring myself to not name my character Link.
Good on you.
You get the option. You get the option of changing it. Can't do it.
That's actually as far as Scott got in the game.
Yeah.
Just to the name.
That's what he says is complete.
I don't even think
it was a challenge.
I don't even think he's pressed start. He got the K and bailed.
It was a challenge.
Press A.
Sure didn't.
Bringing it back.
Hey. Oh, it's good. Story.
Scott.
It does a dual timeline story where
it didn't. Yeah, I mean, the only thing my biggest issue with it is it just like once you get to the point where you can travel back and forth in time. If you want to actually complete the game, it's like kind of grindy and it's kind of annoying. You gotta sit there grind for freaking rupees, and you're like, buy all the magic beans.
Or you just save the damn princess and get it over with.
Yeah, but you gotta complete the game, Jacob. You can't just beat it. Like, what the fuck are you? Seriously.
You gotta get the master's armors.
Yeah. You gotta absolutely just, you gotta look at Ganondorf and just kill him at the end of the game. You can't stand
You're just gonna melt. You're gonna look at him.
You just look at him and you're like...
Listen, I don't know if you got the Vigoron sword, but that's as close as you're going to get in that game.
Oh, I know. Even getting that was just annoying. Like, run here in this amount of time. You can't teleport.
Oh yeah, don't teleport, because it takes it down to like 5 seconds. You're like, what? What happened? Yeah.
This is gameplay.
Yeah, I want to get back to that. Yeah, for my reaction to the story, when I first played it, I was 8, 10, somewhere there. That's all my stories when I'm younger happen in that time frame. I don't know why. So I was young. It was one of the first story-driven 3D games I had played. Actually, story-driven games in general, because before that I had played things like Mario and stuff like that, which, like, you know, Save the Princess, whoop-de-doo, right?
Are you saying Mario is not the pinnacle of storytelling in video game?
Wait, what do you mean?
Gold standard.
Save the Princess. Isn't the whole thing with Ocarina of Time just save Princess Zelda?
No, it's.
But you're saving her in a different way.
Oh my god, what?
There's more meat on the princess's bones in this one.
Okay, I got you. I understand.
She gives you a magical flute.
Instead of a cake. Yeah.
I feel like if I played the game as a kid, I would have enjoyed the story more. It just didn't,
Probably.
like, I just didn't really care that much, to be honest.
Are you saying you've lost your sense of magic and wonder?
I mean, no.
Yes.
It's just like, just not really grasping at this
It's not
point
the most
in my life.
compelling, no.
It's like, oh, and like already knowing all of the big like surprises the game throws at you before you going in kind of ruins it all, right? Like,
Yeah, a little bit with Zelda and Sheik.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like mainly that, and you're just like, or like all the
Sages.
people who become the sages. You're like, well, that was obvious.
You mean the people I interacted to?
The only people
Yeah,
I
the
talked
only
to in
interesting
the
people
game.
in the whole kingdom. Yeah, great.
A total of 8 of them. Strange.
And why did one of them disappear all of a sudden? Like, I was talking to her for so long. Where'd she go? Also, who's this Sheik character? By the way, 20-year-old spoilers ahead, so just so you're warned. But yeah, when I was playing this as a kid, I was kind of enthralled. Like, this was the first like really big story game I had played. Like I said before, that was Mario and like Pokemon Snap. So great standards in storytelling there. And I loved it. I loved the world. I loved being able to explore it and have all these characters who had different, I don't want to say not motives, like just different, like that they all had things. Like the whole thing with the ranchers, they had a story that went on, and even smaller things like the townspeople. When you're moving to the future, you get to see like what happened to them. Like they all had to move to Kokoriko Village and start up new lives, and how they adapted in that period. And then bigger surprises with the main storyline, like Zelda and Sheik was a huge one, and it really compelled me, and just the world itself left an imprint on the kind of worlds that I like exploring and building myself. So it definitely had a huge impact for me. Brandon,
I kind of get this feeling that the story hasn't aged well. Like in our era of video games, we're actually used to like a bit more fleshed out, especially in the world and how we see it. Do you guys feel like that's a valid statement?
Definitely. I mean, it's not just from the era. Like obviously back then, video games were just developing. Like they were really just starting to come into their own. Compared to nowadays, where you can have games like, not Left 4 Dead. What's that zombie game? Not a zombie game. Left Behind, PlayStation 4, made by Uncharted guys.
The Last of Us?
Last of Us.
Yeah,
You have games like The Last of Us and Gone Home, which are like these amazing narrative
Until Dawn.
games.
Until Dawn.
Until Done.
No.
These awesome narrative experiences. But back then, those weren't very common, almost non-existent. And while Zelda tried, it was funny how just a couple years later, the same team developed Majora's Mask, which most people say has one of the more interesting stories for Zelda games especially, but just in games in general. It explores very different themes and has some very strong themes in it, whereas Zelda is much more, or Ocarina of Time rather, is much more like, save the princess, save the world, defeat the bad guy, kind of standard fare. But
Well, you could say that they knew their way around the block by the time they did Majora's Mask. They knew what was going on, so they could do more interesting things and delve deeper into the narrative.
definitely, considering Majora's Mask used much of the technology from Ocarina, and Ocarina was kind of the harbinger, I guess would be the word, of a 3D age in video games. Like before this, we had Super Mario 64, which kind of like ushered in that area of 3D, and Zelda really had to work hard to refine it because Mario 64 had some issues with its camera, and Z targeting really helped.
Final
Mario
boss.
64 had a lot of issues.
Final
but
boss. Camera.
That's
So-
for another podcast.
So the technical
Maybe.
aspect, probably took some time away from writing a narrative, but that doesn't change the fact that Ocarina of Time's narrative isn't super, super strong. But, I mean, that's not really what they were trying to do with it. And it's not bad.
Well, one thing that
No, it's not
kind of
bad.
fleshed out where they added some narrative to a gameplay mechanic was the gameplay mechanic they introduced in Ocarina of Time was the lock-on mechanic, And to explain that, they had Navi with you, and she was the lock-on mechanic.
Hey,
And
listen.
it's that nice little story hook to just a gameplay mechanic that I think gets overshadowed by "Hey, listen," because of Navi.
Yeah,
like Navi is really important.
she is. Yeah, I've never
gameplay and narrative.
Could you imagine like shooting from the hip that whole game?
How else would Link 360 no scope?
Yeah, the bow.
Put a scope on that bow.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Another
big thing that this game, narrative-wise, is how it affected every other Zelda game afterwards, and even before it, by how it shaped the timeline specifically. And for people that don't know, the way the Zelda timeline works, all the games fit in, is that there were games before Ocarina of Time, and then at Ocarina of Time, the timeline actually splits into 3 different timelines, and then there are games on those 3 timelines. And what are your guys' thoughts on the 3-way split timeline?
As someone who kind of was into the Zelda community before there was an official timeline, trying to come up with possible timelines with very vague, basically non-existent hints from the games. Like, they were really created separately, and then they've kind of been cobbled together now. But being part of that community, trying to like where does this game fit in, and like this happened there, and that was referenced here, so it like this much happened there, but no, like it was actually referencing this event. Like, it was so convoluted, but just so fun when you kind of delved into some of the world building that they had put into the different games. And Ocarina of Time was kind of the first big one to have callbacks to some of the other ones, in more than just like oh, this image appeared in that game, let's just put it in. Like, they kind of had almost a history about it. Now that there is an official timeline, and how it kind of goes is that you're right, it splits at Ocarina, and one of them is that Link fails. Anytime you die in Ocarina of Time, you've started off the Link's Dead timeline, where Ganon actually succeeds, and the sages have to do it without Link, and it takes them a long battle. And that kind of history is explored, not explored. It's kind of the backdrop for some of the other Zeldas that go down that path. I think the first.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people were expecting a timeline to be Link fails.
Yeah, right. That was one of the big surprises of the official timeline.
Yeah, a lot of people thought it was a 2-way timeline, but Nintendo's like, nah, it's 3.
It's 3.
Just wait until they introduce the 4th timeline and explode your mind.
The in-between timeline. It's actually like going across them.
Link kind of failed, but also kind of won. It's kind of weird.
Mario came in at one point. It was just.
It's the Smash Bros. Timeline.
Oh yeah, there you go. But yeah, the official timeline is, especially now, once they've kind of introduced that, they've stuck to it more. The Twilight Princess has some very obvious callbacks to Ocarina of Time, not just in its graphics,
Definitely.
But also just like in the world. Like it's pretty apparent that this takes place in the same Hyrule that Ocarina did. Same with Wind Waker. Wind Waker has a direct callback to Ocarina of Time when you go beneath the sea. The Skyward Sword is kind of the setup. It's the first game of the timeline. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of foreshadowing Ocarina of Time, and then the new game seems to. We don't know which timeline it's connecting to, but it is definitely part of one of those worlds. And it'll be interesting to kind of decide and figure out as gamers which of those timelines it is, because I feel like they might kind of lean on that, and there might be a certain element, however big it is, of hey, like which one could this possibly be? Who knows?
I have the Hyrule Historia with me, and they make some interesting claims here. That so for the storytelling of the games, they go like kind of the Star Wars route, where they say this is actually just a legend, so some things won't match up, because we're just telling you like a story of what happened, not telling you verbatim what happened.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting approach for them. It also makes sense with the title.
It also covers their asses.
Oh, big time.
Because like I was saying, they didn't start off these games to be a coherent story. So if things don't make sense, they could just say, well, the narrators got it wrong. But it works well. It's a great device for them to use.
Definitely. They also flat out mentioned in the Historia that if a game comes out later that contradicts everything, then that's just a retcon. Everything will change.
I like how they're making it easy for themselves. Like, why complicate it unnecessarily?
That this is the way it is until something new comes out that says differently.
So just to kind of clarify, what exactly are the 3 different timelines?
Okay, so
because I don't not having grown up playing the Zelda games or being super interested in them as a child, never really learned all of that stuff.
One point about the timelines, the timelines aren't referenced directly in any of the games. They're all self-contained stories.
Okay.
They just take inspiration when they're making the world for, okay, which timeline is this going to be in? But very few of them make reference to the timeline split at all.
Okay.
And almost none of them make reference to previous games. But it's just something outside of the game that fans and now Nintendo officially has made.
Well, it's like there are 3 different outcomes in Ocarina of Time, and then the games just go off of those outcomes.
What are they? So
the
one
outcomes is Link is defeated, and people have to band together to fight Ganon, and that goes in. And then there's 2 ones where he's triumphant, and one is the child timeline, one is the adult timeline. Those timelines go forward, despite you going back and forth between them.
Basically, with those last 2, what happens is when Zelda sends you back at the end of the game, she creates 2 timelines. The first one, which is the adult timeline, is the one where all that bad stuff Ganon did actually happened, and now Zelda and the sages have to kind of rebuild, and they continue on from that timeline. But because Zelda sent Link back, she actually messed with the timeline, and there is no Link in that timeline. He doesn't exist. She sent him back.
Yeah, so the hero of time doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's Zelda and the sages.
And kind of how that works is that when Link was using the Master Sword to time travel, essentially, he was just being frozen in time. So his body was aging, and then when he went back to his younger body. But when she sent him back, she used a different type of magic. So that she kind of sent his consciousness back. So yeah, essentially, like I said, no Link. Whereas the young Link timeline is the one she sent him back to. Zelda and Link as children are able to defeat Ganon before he does any of that bad stuff. And that leads to different events, obviously.
The main difference is that in the adult timeline, Ganondorf, he has all the power, and there's nothing really stopping him from coming back if he wants to. But in the child timeline, he's actually captured. He doesn't have all the power, and he's actually executed. But that doesn't go quite right, as we see in later games.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the Wind Waker is a continuation of the adult timeline.
Yes.
And Twilight Princess is a continuation of the child timeline.
Yeah, in Twilight Princess, we actually see the execution.
Yes.
Yay.
I need to play that one. I need to play Wind Waker too.
Twilight Princess, I think Wind Waker is the best Zelda. It is so much different, and there's so much cool stuff in it. But I love Twilight Princess aesthetic, and it's still a very good game in its own right.
I
have it for GameCube, so I don't have to use the nunchucks.
I would love to replay Twilight Princess. I just never want to play the Wolf Link parts again.
Yeah, they tried a lot of things in that game, and some of them just didn't work out. Again, even with the Wii remote controls, like, it was such an early... It was one of the first Wii games. It still came out on the GameCube. That's how early it was. But that's a discussion for another day that I'd love to have with you guys.
Yeah, I think we've fully discussed the narrative of Ocarina of Time, that we've moved on discussing other things. So we should move on to the gameplay mechanics of Ocarina of Time and what it introduced not only to the franchise, but kind
Jacob
of
wants to play the sound.
No, continue.
the gaming industry. Player sound.
Okay, it's done.
Beautiful.
Oh my god, I hate you so much.
Sorry, I'm not constantly staring at you, Jacob.
So I'm just gonna have to say I'm actually impressed by how smooth-ish the mechanics are for a game of that.
Age?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, in comparison to other games, like even like in the Nintendo 64 era, there were a lot of games where the mechanics were super duper
Janky.
junky and just
Yeah.
really
Very
bad.
tanky.
They were as chunky as the polygons they used.
They were as chunky as Donkey Kong 64.
As Chunky Kong.
Shots
Oh.
fired. Scott, are you you're referring to the original 64 version, not the remaster?
Well, the
Well, even
I've
the
only
GameCube version.
I've only really played the 3DS version
Okay.
to completion, right?
Yes, but you did play a little bit of 64.
Yeah, but
Got
I mean,
his
like
name in. We know this.
the only real difference I noticed, like because the 3DS is you can like tilt the screen and stuff like that, and like which you wouldn't have been able to do in the original one. But other than that, I didn't feel like there was anything that would have not been around in the 64 era.
There was a few minor improvements.
Well, the tilting the screen thing was awesome
I'd imagine.
for some of the things. It just made shooting stuff so much easier. But
aiming with
what
the
actual
old
change-
thing.
What
What were the
changes
changes?
were in the 3DS?
The ones that I know of, obviously, are the graphics. The story didn't
Well,
change.
Wait, they updated the graphics? What?
just barely, just so you can still see it.
And then they did some small quality of life improvements, like in the original, when you're in the water temple and you have to use the iron boots a lot, you actually have to go into your inventory, go left twice, I think, unequip them from the equipment menu, close the menu.
And they made it an item instead.
Exactly, which makes it
Oh.
much easier.
Yeah, that would have been annoying as shit.
Yeah, it was. That's why one of the reasons why they changed it. And there were some other
They made the
small
boat
improvements.
faster.
In
Although-
similar vein.
Although in defense, it made me have to equip the boots in one of my item slots. So
Granted, yeah. One other change was just like small features that were exclusive to the 64, like the rumble pack. They had to change slightly to work with the DS, which
It blurs your vision, your 3D vision.
yeah, but nothing major, no major changes, just some small quality of life improvements, really.
fair enough.
And the addition of Master Quest, which was before then only released as a pre-order if you got it on GameCube or something like that.
Yeah, there was a Master
so.
Quest version of game on GameCube where it was like Ocarina and the first two Zeldas, I think.
Yeah, and I think it came with Wind Waker as like a pre-order bonus or something like that.
Maybe.
And
I don't
before
remember.
that, Master Quest was only available in Japan, I believe.
But yeah, I mean, I played a little bit of that. That was fun. But yeah, I mean, as far as gameplay goes, I think that's what the one thing that got me through the game was like, wasn't even really the story. It was just like how easy the mechanics were to like work, and like how well they did work for what they were.
Yeah,
Like I didn't notice.
No, continue.
I was gonna say I didn't notice a lot of like really like having to play with the mechanics a lot to get them to work, and they kind of just worked.
Yeah,
More or
Zelda
less.
as a series is very polished. It's not something like, I'll go back to Donkey Kong for whatever reason, but like there's that one mini game in Donkey Kong that's pretty famous for being like almost impossible to get.
The
You like
Mario versus Donkey Kong, the arcade game.
No, you have to get like bugs in a hole or something like that. In
Are you talking
Donkey
about
Kong 64. In Donkey Kong 64, there's a mini game. You
Where
need
to
to
get the
one of
rats.
rats in a hole or something. I
Or
can't
beavers
remember.
or whatever.
It
You
was
have to chase
beavers.
them around. You
Yeah.
have to chase them around and get them to fall in, and they never did.
Yes. So that was pretty
Oh, yeah.
clearly something broken. Zelda generally didn't have things like that. It was very just like everything works how it's supposed to.
That'd be good, Jacob. That'd be good.
And kind of the core mechanics of it is that there is combat. The combat is very like wait for your
Basic.
opponent. Yeah, it is very basic, which is one of the kind of the big shames for me when going back to it, because all combat basically devolves into one of two things: either wait for the enemy to expose his weakness and hit him with your sword, or wait for the enemy to, or realize you can't hit the enemy, use an item to expose his weakness, and then hit him with your sword. That is Zelda combat. But the other big mechanic of Zelda, is puzzle solving, which again uses the items.
My biggest like combat issue was fighting Dark Link.
Yeah.
I just literally just mashed hit until I killed him. That's pretty much all I did.
I don't think I've ever beaten him legitimately. For those of you that don't know, at one point you fight a shadow version of Link.
And used Inspire.
Oh no, there's another way. Basically, he counters all your moves. Like he does the same moves, and you can't really damage him. And he can land a few hits on you. The way to cheese him, the easiest way to cheese him, is to use the Megaton Hammer. He can't counter it, and you just keep hitting him, and he dies.
I never even thought to use that.
So you can also use bombs and stuff like that.
Couldn't you pretend to stab yourself, and then he actually does stab himself? Like I feel that's a valid strategy.
No, you'd have to actually stab yourself. So you'd win in a way.
But couldn't you pretend to have like a fake sword? Like
I'm sick. Arsenal? Just start throwing up, like pretend throwing up, and just decapitate him. One of my favorite parts about that fight, other than the fact that it spawned Shadow Link, which is kind of maybe it didn't spawn. I think there was Shadow Links before. In either case, Shadow Link is cool. One of my favorite things about that fight is that if you stab, Shadow Link will stand on top of your sword, slash you, and like backflip off your sword. It's pretty great.
Just to show how much better he is than you.
Yeah, that was annoying.
I mean, he's a shadow, so he doesn't weigh anything. It's not fair. But yeah.
And you know how he does damage to you as a shadow. It's not fair. He should just go right through you. Do nothing.
Actually, that reminds me. Like, there are some combat mechanics to Ocarina of Time. They're just not fully explored. Like, you can do either vertical or horizontal slashes, depending on whether you're using the Z target, which can kind of help you either hit more enemies or not hit walls and stuff like that. And then you can do the backstab, you can do backflips, you can kind of strafe to the side. There are those kinds of
spin. Yeah,
you can do the sword spin. All of them have obviously somewhat different uses, but you're never really required to use any of them. And it's kind of a shame. Granted, I don't want it to become something like this binary thing, like this and like kind of like a Skyward Sword, where it's just like they block in different orientations and you have to swing in that orientation. I don't want it to be something quite that binary, but something like Dark Souls, which again takes so much inspiration from Zelda, is fun, where it's just like you have to bob and weave and like get in when you can and then back out, and you have different sword techniques that you can use that are, depending on how you've read the enemy and what weapon you're using, can be more effective in certain situations. Like, I need to get a fast attack in when he's doing this animation, and then dodge and do a heavy attack to finish him off. Like, that kind of stuff would feel awesome in a Zelda game.
So you're saying Zelda should take a page from Dark Souls and become Dark Souls, The Legend of Zelda?
Well, I mean, Dark Souls took a page from Zelda, so why not? If the new game is anything to go by, Zelda took a page from Skyrim. Hopefully they don't copy the combat. Oh my god.
Oh.
The first person Zelda game.
Oh no. No, I like my Zelda in 3D. I don't mind seeing it.
In third person?
And 3D. The 2D ones are total trash. Never play the 2D ones. They're awful.
Jesus.
I don't mean that.
I can't believe you're in this podcast. But a gameplay mechanic that was introduced in Ocarina of Time. Remember that game?
What's that?
Epona was introduced. Your horse. First time Link has a horse. And it's exciting to have a horse and a way to travel around very quickly. And they gave you a nice big field to run around in.
Yeah. Unlocking Epona when I was young was awesome because it really opened up the world, and it was just like, oh my god, I actually get to ride a horse around this field. That is so cool. And I probably spent a couple hours doing just that. And I know my little cousin at the time did nothing but that for months, potentially years. She would just log in, ride around an opponent, and turn the game off. So yeah, that was a big.
They might still be doing it. We don't know.
I haven't seen her in a while. I guess it must be what she's doing.
Maybe she upgraded to Twilight Princess.
No, I know for a fact she played them all and she loved riding the horse and then she just moved on to finally beating them. I was quite proud, actually. My little cousin started beating Zeldas and now she's better at them than I am. So.
Scrub.
But yeah, Epona.
Jacob's life.
Everything from Epona to just some of the items, which we had seen some of them in previous Zeldas, really achieved their like iconic use in Ocarina of Time, like the hook shot, like the mirror shield.
That was cool.
The bow and arrow, like granted it had been used before, but it was fully realized in this 3D space. The boomerang, again, utilized before, but realized in a 3D space.
The Rumble Rock.
The all-powerful, all-knowing Rumble Rock that has been in every iteration since. So, yeah, I quite enjoyed the puzzle solving in Ocarina of Time, thanks to those items. Basically, the formula for Zelda is find the dungeon, go to the dungeon, find the item in the dungeon, use the item to beat the dungeon, and then use the item to beat the boss. Pretty simple, but it's satisfying.
I think the most satisfying part is when, after the dungeon, you find more uses for that item.
That is true. Yeah. You're right, actually.
And I hate it when I get an item in Zelda, and it's literally only used in that dungeon.
Like the friggin' rod, the moving rod from Twilight Princess.
Twilight Princess was awful for this.
Yeah, or the spinning disc.
Spinning top.
Yeah. Like there was.
I love the spinning disc until I left that dungeon.
There was like one track you could use it on in the overworld, and like it went on for like ever, and at the end was a heart piece, and it's like, okay, that was cool. It was a ride. I will never use this item again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So unfortunate.
Ocarina of Time did have that problem, but then also introduced the double hook shot or claw shot, or as I like to call it, Spider-Man 2.
You can't swing, Jacob. Don't be silly.
It's close enough, man.
Not at all, but okay. What about exploring the overworld? Did you guys enjoy it? Did it feel satisfying?
Scott,
after it's really fun running around in what?
You're breaking up. While your internet sorts itself up, I'll just go quickly. Obviously, exploration is a huge part of Zelda, in all of them, and it was actually kind of limited in Ocarina of Time compared to some of the other games. Yes, there were secrets to find. Yes, there were areas like a large expanse for you to kind of ride around in. But compared to the older Zeldas, it wasn't all that much. They focused so much on building a 3D world, they couldn't focus on things like narrative and like exploration. The world had to be smaller than other Zeldas because they had to build it all in 3D, and it was the first time they were really doing that. So it's understandable. But having said that, it was still fun to find the secrets. To find the Big Oran Sword is a huge quest that I love, and just some of the hidden things you can find in that game are really, really cool. And then some of them are just cows underground for no reason that give you milk, or you get to this really cool spot that like you saw like way at the beginning of the game, like I'm gonna get there one day, and then you're near the end, you have like the golden gauntlets and all this shit, and then you finally cross this chasm of lava, and there's a Deku Scrub at the end of it who sells you seeds.
Beautiful.
So yeah, like the game's kind of hit and miss with its exploration at times, but there was still a lot to do in it, which I appreciate. And I know, Scott, you were saying you scoured all of Hyrule for cool things, so
You mugged people even.
I think you're back if you want to talk.
Am I?
Yeah.
You're back.
Oh, good. Yeah. Not gonna lie, my first playthrough didn't get all the Skulltulas.
Who needs them? Who needs to save spider people? They're spider
I
people.
mean,
Spider people.
because like
They don't
there were
matter.
100 of them, and like I got to a point where I had missed a couple, and I'm like, no, not going back. Too late.
I'm not going back into the water temple for those.
It was too late.
Fuck
It was
that.
just too. It was too late. Like it was like because like they made it so you had to go back. It's oh my god, Master Quest is like the worst for this. So like right from the beginning, in the first like the Deku Tree, you literally have to finish all 3 of the first caves to be able to get some of the Skulltulas in the Deku Tree. And you're like, why? Like why are you making me get all these items to get back and get 2 golden Skulltula coins? Like why? Why are you doing this to me? It was yeah, and that's like one of the things I meant, like where like it's like that's where opponent came in nice and handy. I was like, well, at least I can get there in 2 seconds, and I don't have to hear like, yeah, like all over and over again from Rolex. Oh my god!
Oh, yeah,
Like,
rolling,
I would just like mute my volume when I was like traveling as a kid. I'm like, no, not listening to this. This is too much.
I got up to get my Ocarina of Time official perfect guide.
Oh yeah.
Which, like all of my guides, I stole from someone. Now, and looking through it, I just remembered, like, yeah, this is a Nintendo 64 game. And what are Nintendo 64 games? Collectathons. So, yeah, you're collecting Skeletolas, you're collecting heart pieces, you're collecting rubies and
rupees. Actually, well, rupees, you kind of like. There's just too many in the game. Like,
well, I mean, you're not gonna collect every rupee. I was just like saying.
Well, it's not even that. Like, I mean, like you're just like you're like, oh look, I found a purple. Oh wait, I'm already full.
Great. Oh yeah, that did feel bad. That was always, and that's
like, oh look, 100 rupees that I can't use because I'm full.
And also, they're gone now.
Yeah.
Congratulations for collecting that, asshole.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
I dropped them and shattered.
Yeah. Oh no. If only I couldn't put them in my bag. They disintegrate otherwise, unless they're in tall grass. But beyond those
bowling alley.
beyond those kind of stupider collectibles, there were really cool things that you could discover. There was the different spells. There's 3 spells that you can find throughout the game that you didn't need to find, but were helpful.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say 3.
Yeah, Din's Fire, Fior's Wind, and Nehru's Love. And then there is the different item upgrades. So like you can hold more arrows or more bombs and
bomb
stuff
bag.
like that. Wait, was there a bomb bag upgrade? Yeah, there was, right?
You got it in the bowling alley. It's one of the prizes.
Yeah.
You can also get bomb shoes super early by doing that too.
Bomb shoes are actually another mechanic. It's an item, but there's only a limited number of them in the whole world, which I thought was very, very cool. Maybe never used them, but it was still cool.
What do you mean there's a limited number of them in the world?
There's only so many bomb shoes.
But you can find them in like tall grass.
No, you can't.
Bombs.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can.
Maybe in the new version, but in the older one, there's only a limited number.
In the new version, you can definitely find them. And you can also just go back to Bomb Shoe Bowling Alley and just win more bomb shoes.
Huh, yeah, as far as I remember, I might be getting it wrong, but I never picked up bomb shoes from random drops, and I think when I was reading that a while back, it said, like, yeah, there's only so many in the world. Which I thought was a very interesting mechanic. But yeah,
I think we're winding down from gameplay. We've had a lot of spiel about it.
Yeah.
Would you guys
Spiel.
agree?
Yeah. I've got my 2 cents in.
Your 2 rupees?
Yeah, well, I have fucking 1 million of them to spare, so why not?
Only 100. That's all your child bag can carry.
Well, yeah, but you get the adult bag by finding 10 Skulltula coins, so...
What's that, like 200?
Yeah, doubles it. But then you can also get the Giants bag. I don't remember how you get that. You can get 500.
I think it's 500, and it's Skeletolas. I think it's like 50 Skeletolas or something like that.
Is it Skeletolas? I don't know. I didn't get that far. I got to like 40 of them. I'm just like, I don't care anymore.
I got it once, And that's like when I was like, Ocarina of Time is the best game ever.
I
gotta go to grade 5 now.
The only game that I cared about enough to complete was Donkey Kong, so.
Worthwhile game to play.
Oh, yeah.
And
Anyway.
I think you can tell just from us talking about it that this game has had a big influence on at least half of the podcast crew.
At least.
At least.
I like the segue you're doing there. Just gonna point that out and make it obvious.
Now you've ruined the entire segue by pointing it out. And I don't think half of our podcast is alone in feeling this way, because this game's huge. It's like considered like one of the best games put forward. It's not just out of Zelda, not just out of Nintendo, but just out of the entire gaming industry.
Yeah, I think it's rated like... It was number 1. It was rated the number 1 game ever for years. And I think it's only been dethroned recently, and it's like at number 2 or 3. Yeah, this
Angry Birds beat it or something? Yeah.
Influential and successful. Sorry?
It was dethroned by like Angry Birds or something, right?
Oh yeah, no. It was Pokemon Go, actually.
That's not surprising.
No, I think the game that took its spot might have been that game I was referring to, the Uncharted guys game.
Last of Us?
Left for Last of Us.
Last of Us?
The last of many.
The Dead of Us? I don't know.
Yeah, that one. I think that might have dethroned it. You can Google it, list of 100 games. Everyone's got their own different one.
Why would you come to this podcast for information? Jeez.
Right.
You're just here for opinions.
Hold up. I'm going to give you guys
facts?
The most amount of information this podcast has ever given anyone here. I'm just going to hold this up. You can read that paragraph while I try and make sure this book doesn't fall apart. There. You got your information.
I don't think anybody can read that because there was like glare on it.
Good. I'm sure it was gibberish about going to Lake Hyla and killing a Tic Tac.
Speaking of...
all those damn Tic Tacs.
Those fucking big pose you had to shoot on Epona.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that collecting game. God, there was just so much shit in that game. I just forgot about it. I love it.
Literally the worst. You're like creeping up slowly to them, so they just pop into view so you can shoot them because it's impossible otherwise.
Great. Now, Jacob, you mentioned that you were part of the community for a little while there, back with the timeline.
Yeah, so I guess we can move on to our last segment, which is community, and we can do that with a bumper! Yay!
We've been doing community for a while now.
Need a light.
We did it! Alrighty. Community.
We were doing community for a while now, Jacob.
Yeah, I was involved. I wasn't like directly involved in any of it. I didn't like put forward theories out to the internet. I did a lot with my friends and cousins, and most of my information would come from what people were kind of figuring out together. But I devoured it. I was just like, oh yeah, like this thing, like of course this would fit in there, like because it makes so much sense. And then someone would put counter theory forward and I'd go like, oh yeah, that what I thought was dumb, like that. This is totally how it is now, and lots of that kind of back and forth. But once they kind of threw out the official timeline, on the one hand I was like, oh, okay, like this is actually how it is. Cool, that's wonderful. But that kind of sense of mystery disappeared. If anyone ever watched Lost, it's kind of like that. Once you know the truth, it's not quite as fun, and sometimes even the opposite. Whereas the mystery, when things aren't fully explained, yes, it's somewhat unsatisfying, but the dialogue that comes out of it is so awesome.
Yeah, I think it's to give people more of a base to go off of. And now you can go back and see more of the direct signs of it.
Yeah, you can see the patterns more.
With your thing about Lost, you can appreciate the things they've done in the previous things that show up in the end. And you realize everything's been connected this entire time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely something like that. And... Oh, Taylor, you're kind of breaking up.
Don't worry, you were breaking up for me too.
Woohoo! You're back now.
Aw, yeah! You're back. But yeah, Ocarina of Time as I first started, is such an iconic game where Zelda games after it have been incredibly influenced just because people kind of expect it to be more like Ocarina of Time. When Zelda game like kind of steps out of line and stops being like Ocarina of Time, people took offense to that. To
their detriment, I would say. The backlash that Wind Waker received because its graphics were so different from Ocarina of Time. Your phone is black. The offense that people took to Wind Waker because of its graphics was so undeserved. Like I said, Wind Waker is one of the best Zelda games around, and people panned it for years because it looked cartoony. So much so that their next game, which was Twilight Princess, went so far back into those aesthetics that Ocarina kind of laid out that they kind of forgot about being inventive, which is what they're best at. So as much as I like Ocarina of Time, I love that aesthetic, like I said. And again, that's one of the reasons why I like Twilight Princess so much. I want to see what they can do when they step away from that, because when they did, aka Ocarina of Time, not Ocarina of Time, sorry, Wind Waker, they made something awesome, just so cool, one of my favorite games ever. Granted, they kind of tried to do something somewhat similar with Skyward Sword, and it was a big flop, but I think they were kind of constrained slightly differently in that regard.
Skyward Sword is my favorite Zelda ever.
It's cool, like, just to see all the different things they implemented in the different games, even in the handhelds, how they added some things that you could only do, like, they added, like, mechanics that you could only do in the handhelds, like in Phantom Hourglass, you actually have to close your DS at one point to, like, print a map.
Right, like, I still remember to this day, it was that cousin I was saying, who only rode Epona for years and years, she had she had Phantom Hourglass, and she got stuck on a part where you have like a map. I think this is the one you're talking about, and we couldn't figure out, like, how do you blow on it? Do you, like, touch it, twist it, pull it, bop it? We can't figure out how to get this thing onto this other part of the screen. And then I just looked at it for a second, and I closed the DS. And then I'm pretty sure it goes like do-do-do-do, and I was just like, oh my god! And I opened it and it had moved. And I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool! Like, it was just awesome. Like, stuff like that was so, like, that's the inventiveness that Zelda is known for. And Ocarina of Time, like, it had this great 3D realized world and story and all that kind of stuff, and kind of learned to utilize a 3D space better than any other game. So when they're free to kind of explore those kinds of things, the Zelda team can just, I don't want to say work miracles. They can make some damn good games, is what they can do. So I'm excited for the new one. It's looking really good.
Yeah. Legend of Ocarina of Time and Zelda franchise in general has actually kept, like, a kind of genre in gaming that's ill-defined at best, kind of alive, and that's the adventure genre. Like, not the point-and-click adventure, but just the more, like, action-adventure kind of genre, where for a long time it was mostly just Zelda games and then a one-off game here and there, where I think we're now seeing almost like a renaissance in adventure games.
Yeah, definitely after Zelda there were lots of adventure games. That was kind of the bread and butter of the N64 and GameCube era, PlayStation 2 to early PlayStation 3. And we have kind of moved away from it, but I feel like games like Uncharted are kind of the evolution of that, where it's more about set pieces, but it is still an adventure that has some very strong story elements.
Uncharted, Tomb Raider, God of War.
Yeah, I think those are the evolutions of
Prince of Persia.
Prince of Persia.
Yeah, actually, that's true.
Yeah, good one.
Of that kind of thing. And then there was also the ones that kind of developed in the other way, whereas some of those are more about collecting and story and set pieces. Games like Dark Souls kind of went in the other way, where it's like exploring a dungeon and fighting monsters and maybe not having the most well thought out story. those are harkening back to some of the older games that didn't have quite as.
Are you criticizing Dark Souls' story?
Dark Souls leaves you to create your own story.
I really appreciate Dark Souls' story telling because it doesn't really have a story.
Also,
There's
going
a
back to
story.
adventure games,
There is.
The Witcher, really good to add.
The Witcher, I feel like because
Great storytelling, good adventure.
I mean I'm not the biggest fan of genres just because they can get so muddled, but I also like putting things in categories, so I'm going to do this. Witcher takes more inspiration from classic RPGs and medieval fantasy than Zelda. They don't really share anything other than like theme of medieval fantasy.
I am surprisingly with Jacob. I also consider it like a quintessential action RPG game.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's an action RPG. It is not so much about the role play as it is about being a cool dude doing cool things. Whereas role playing games,
you can still have role play.
yeah, but whereas role playing games like
Dialogue
The Witcher,
choices. Oh, are we talking about Witcher? Or...
yeah,
I'm talking about Witcher.
yeah, you
I
can
meant
still
like
role play.
specifically in that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Good.
Good talk.
All right,
Great.
carry
We-
on.
Glad
we
we
did
had
it.
that.
we did it.
So, do you guys think you're going to stay in the Legend of Zelda franchise?
I need to start playing them.
Me too.
I own.
Oh wait, Brand is here.
I own every console game up to Skyward Sword, and I own Skyward Sword. But
Do you
how
own
many
all
have
of
I? Yes. How many have I played? I have played through only handheld versions of the games. So I need to play them, but that involves setting up my 64 and my GameCube, which is a lot of work.
Yeah, it could be hard to play some of them, and some of them might have mechanics, especially the
And my
older
Wii.
ones, that are difficult to get through. But I would recommend doing it. You having
Well,
played
you don't
the
need to set up your
handhelds-
GameCube. You need to set up your Wii.
It's true.
It's true.
And no, the Wii U
I have a
can't
first
play.
gen Wii that I can plug in.
The Wii U can't play them though, right? Unless you buy them.
You can play the
U,
Wii.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can play Skyward Sword.
You having played the handheld games, I find that the handheld games are where they had some of their most creative moments. So that's definitely not bad that you played those. Those are some really good ones. But the really iconic ones are obviously the console ones.
Yeah.
And I would definitely recommend, if you can stomach it, and I think there was a remake that came out recently for the 3DS of Majora's Mask.
Yeah,
Majora's
I've
Mask
been
is-
waiting for it to go on sale. It's like $50.
Yeah, that's a really interesting Zelda game. It's very different from other Zelda games, and I would recommend you play it if you like the
A
series.
lot of puzzles.
Yeah, and not just like dungeon puzzles, just like figuring out how the world works is very, very
Yep.
cool. The basic premise behind it, that for those of you that don't know, is that
You have 3 days.
you have 3 days, and all
Yeah,
the action
3 days.
happens in those 3 days, and everything is specifically plotted out, hour by hour, minute by minute, of what's going to happen, and you can kind of influence that. Very, very cool. And just the themes, like the actual like narrative and storytelling themes in that game, are super trippy and weird, and I love it. So I would definitely play that one. Wind Waker, again, my favorite, so go play that one. And then if you're looking for another one, Twilight Princess isn't bad either.
Yeah,
And play Skyward Sword, because it's great.
actually, technically, you can play Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on the Wii U because they made remastered versions. So.
That's true. Yeah, I forgot that they made Twilight Princess
yeah.
on the Wii U. If you're looking for an older one
Wind
to play,
Waker is a lot better on Wii U.
yeah, I heard they made improvements similar to how they did to the 3DS re-release of Ocarina. If you're looking for one of the older ones to play, the only one I can really recommend wholeheartedly is A Link to the Past. There are many versions of A Link to the Past. I would play that one. That one is very, very good. You can see a lot
What
of
console is
influences.
that on, though?
That would have been any Super NES.
Super Nintendo, right? Yeah.
I played it on the Game Boy Advanced.
I have A Link Between Worlds, which is the 3DS version.
Yeah.
Like the spiritual successor to it, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a direct sequel, I believe.
Or sequel. Okay.
So that's a good one. And then if you're looking for another one from the older ones, I would recommend Link's Awakening, which is a Game Boy game. Also very good. But I haven't played that one myself. I just hear that it's good, I should say.
And so I think that closes out our discussion of the Ocarina of Time. This has been Press A2 Podcast. We take suggestions for future games, and if you want to send those in, you can send them in at Jacob. What's the email?
The email is pressapodcast@gmail.com. Pressapodcast@gmail.com. There is no 2 in the Gmail.
We're also on Twitter.
Yeah, you can follow us there
And
at
Jacob,
Press
what's
A
Twitter?
Podcast. Just look up Press A to Podcast Twitter, and you will find us.
Beautiful, and we'll have our we'll update on our streams and show times. We also have an Overwatch podcast called Overtime and Overwatch Podcast, and you can find that by looking up on iTunes or whatever your podcasting device choice is.
Yeah, I recommend you check that out. It's pretty cool.
You should do it.
I don't know.
Sometime around high noon.
But from... We've released our podcast at high noon. We are very dedicated.
No, we don't.
That's a lie. We don't.
No, we don't.
I actually very often release it at midnight. So
Yeah.
Literally
Low
the
noon.
opposite.
the opposite, yeah.
Low noon.
Literally the opposite.
Low noon. Australian
Night
noon.
noon.
It's Australian
night
noon.
noon.
Underground noon. But from everyone here at Press A to Podcast, thank you for listening, and good luck.
He did it! He stole my line, guys! Oh my god.
He really is the host.
What a bastard. I have been seceded.
I was like, I couldn't wait for Jacob to say goodbye.
Fucking jealous of that Hunter.
I was.
It was 6:30 too.
Oh boy.